what I am doing now, I suggest you do this with clean water. I've deliberately used very pale grey water so you can see what I'm doing. I'm sort of fully loaded my brush and I'm tapping the middle of the brush, holding the brush firmly, spattering this clean water onto the sort of canopy of the tree, but also in the hedgerow in front to help me paint this tree randomly. And I'm using rough watercolour paper to create more texture. So as you can see, when I'm applying the paint now, I can use the little gaps in between, catch those spots of water, and it all just looks a little bit more natural. I'm using a watered down Paynes grey, but as you can see from my sketchbook demo of those different colours, there's lots of different varieties of darks that you can use. And I am working sort of a little bit wet on dry in places, but also where I've spattered with water, damp into damp as well. And I'm trying to leave some of those gaps that you can see on those winter trees, the spaces in between the branches and the foliage as well. And I'm really trying to create some lovely textures around the edges as well, just to kind of create that lovely crisp frosty sort of effect on the branches. So I'm painting the hedgerow now with the same sort of watered down Paynes grey, and in some areas using a dry brush technique, using, as you can see there, the belly of the brush as well, not just the tip, to create some texture on this rough watercolour paper, and also painting wet on dry the sort of grasses, very pale washes in the foreground. Remember, in watercolour, less is more, so try not to paint every single individual grasses there. You'll just lose your white area and it won't look like a snowy winter scene. So you have to almost exaggerate the white and light here. I've mixed up a mid-tone of Paynes grey. What's great is you just have to worry about one colour and the tonal value. Still using the size 10 brush, I'm painting this damp into wet just to create a little bit of dark. I don't want to go too dark because this whole scene is so pale, and I thought it would be such a great challenge just to paint just one colour and try to create this snowy winter scene. I'm using the tip of my brush now as well just to paint the bottom of the sort of little hedgerow here covered in snow, and just trying to create some dark tonal values. I'm using just ordinary table salts and sprinkling it onto the damp surface here, so it's not too wet and it's not dried off, it's just in between, just like baby bear's porridge. And I'm sprinkling it as well on the grasses and on that little hedgerow there. And now I'm going to allow my painting to dry naturally. This is the painting dried off, and look at that lovely texture that the salt has created. It's created that illusion of a frosty look on those winter trees there. I'm swapped now to my size 6 brush, and as you can see, I'm using a much darker tonal value, so less water, more paint. It's the same colour, it's Paynes grey, and I'm just painting the tree trunks and then the branches, and I've diluted my brush as I go towards the top of the tree there to sort of create a paler look, so it looks like it's behind all that frostiness of the foliage and branches there. I've swapped now to my size 2 brush there to paint some of the thinner branches as well. I just find it a little bit easier. You may also find using a rigger or a liner brush easier to paint thin branches. Really take your time painting these winter trees. It can be very therapeutic. You can start off with a lighter tonal value if you want to, and then build that darker tone to give you more confidence. I kind of went a little bit wrong here. I painted that tree trunk far too sort of wide, so I'm just wetting it here and lifted off a little bit with my paper towel as well, just to soften it back. In the back of my mind, I thought I can actually sponge over with white paint to show sort of a lovely snowy effect later, so I knew that I would be okay there, but I wanted to soften it back a little bit. So never fear, there's always ways of getting around things. I'm just carrying on painting these sort of smaller branches and then wetting them with my brush, diluting, lifting off with the paper towel just to smudge them back a bit, to sort of make them look like they're hidden behind some of the foliage with the snow on the trees and the frost. And as I'm painting the smaller branches towards the edge there, I'm just paling off a little bit. The other thing you can do is turn your painting upside down. You may find it easier to paint some of these smaller branches. Just be patient when you're painting winter trees. Your hard work will pay off. Take your time. Remember, the trunks are thicker, the branches are thinner, and then those little twiggy bits are very thin and paler. And I'm also using my paper towel to dab off to create some light areas as well. So I'm just painting some wet on dry now, some sort of darker mid-tone grasses just in front of the trees there, just for a little bit of detail, keeping everything simple. Using my size 6 brush there, just painting in some posts there, making them smaller as they go towards the tree to create some depth. I'm, keeping it really nice and simple. I'm not actually copying the photograph so much, painting a little bit of wire there, and it just draws your eye into the focal point there. That's the tree on the right hand side, and I'm painting some grasses there with the tip of my brush, using that dark tone there, the Paynes grey, wet on dry with my size 2 brush, and just making little marks, not too much, not trying to slavishly copy the photograph, just using it to inspire me to paint this picture here. So remember, less is more, especially if you're starting out in watercolour. So this right hand side of the painting, which has a little bit more detail in the photograph, I decided to play it down a little bit. I felt if I'd painted this tree sort of in the distance on the right hand side, it would come forward too much and flatten the painting and take something away from these middle distant trees. So I've really just painted just a few marks. I'm using this size 2 brush just to paint some darker grasses now in the foreground. You saw I took off the excess fluid off my brush there just to make sure I have lots of control. Again, you will find that so helpful when you're starting out in watercolor painting. It's about controlling that sort of wet medium. I'm just painting some imaginary footprints here going towards the trees and spattering as well to create some textures. It also stops me from overworking my painting. So it's a good time to allow the painting to dry, and this is the final stage. So it's nice and simple this. I've got some white gouache, little bit of cheating here, but it's just to paint some snow on the top of the post with my size 4 brush, wet on dry. I'm also using a bit of dry brush. That's not very much water in the white gouache paint. You can use white watercolor or even white acrylic, but it's just to create some texture on the post there. It almost looks like the snow is stuck to the post. I'm doing the same here with the trees. I've got settled snow in between the branches there, but I'm also going to use that dry brush effect on the front of those tree trunks as well to create texture, and it really does give it that lovely wintry look as well. I'm using my paper towel to take off that excess moisture, so it makes sure I've got a lovely dry brush and just combing that almost on top of that dark paint. The paint won't move because it is dry, but if you overwork it too much, you may disturb the paint underneath. Watercolor isn't permanent, so it's worth bearing that in mind, especially when you work in layers. You want to really carefully put that next layer on without sort of disturbing the paint underneath, because that's where you can end up with muddy watercolors. I'm just lightening up the foreground here, or the hedgerow here, with some more of the white gouache with the belly of my size 2 brush, so almost a little bit of dry brush effect there. I watered down the white gouache slightly using the size 2 brush. You can see I just added a bit more water there. I'm just painting some white branches there. It's really quite nice to do over the Paynes grey, and also I'm going to apply some of that paint onto some of the branches, onto the outside edges, what I'm doing here, to look like the snow has fallen and settled on those branches. It can be quite effective. I'm using a scourer, just an ordinary household scourer. I'm dipping it into the slightly watered down gouache there. It's still slightly creamy, and I'm printing with this white gouache here, wet on dry, onto the top of the tree to create texture and also that frosty look on the trees there. It's so effective. You could have done this with some masking fluid right at the beginning, but I decided to use the white paint instead. I'm finishing off with a spatter. It always stops me from overworking my paintings. I've watered down the white gouache. As you can see, I'm holding it firmly in my hand towards the lower part of the brush and tapping the center of the brush. Really sort of tap it firmly. Try not to let the brush move. Don't let it sort of go up and down. Just hold it firmly in your hand and tap firmly, and keep loading as well. Here is the finished painting. I've kept it really nice and simple, really just 3 stages. And if you'd like to get access to my exclusive weekly tutorials, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about the membership can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.